Now let's return to the story of the Relegati family. Having established that Elias Cork has severed his ties with the Church of Curtis in the most dramatic fashion, we return to the Duchess's estate, where Luciano Relegati is now an old man, and his son, Rigoberto, is a little flighty, shall we say, and very much on the similar vein of his father in terms of not being particularly productive, but times 10. So here we are, looking at these Relegatis, and we'll note that Luciano's mother died when he was quite young, and Rigoberto's mother as well died when he was quite young, when she fell down a well during childbirth. Anyhow, it was a dramatic birth. The Duchess, on her estate, has things going quite swimmingly. The church is bringing in good revenue. She's getting richer and richer. She has solidified all control over her duchy. And things are looking golden scolden. Okay, good. Well, problem arrives at her door. And that problem is the neighboring country over, which is called it's called West Illingston. West Illingston, I think is what it's called. Something like that. West Illingston is a small country that borders New Hampshire, and it borders here. In the middle, there's a mountain with a pass that goes through it to get from one to the next. Now, on this side of the pass is New Hampshire. On that side of the pass is West Illingston. That's not what it's called, though. I can't remember what the country's called. Anyway, so the Duchess gets news from her spies, the Mimsers, who are a couple of merchants who travel around and gather pieces of information from various locales and bring them back to the Duchess and try to sell them to her. And she doesn't think much of these guys, and they don't really do a very great job, but they do catch on to the gist of the goings-on in the various places and report back. So in this particular instance, they report back to the Duchess that her neighboring ruler, Duke Grondovich, has been killed, slain by his own son, Duke Grondovich, who has ascended to the throne. Now, this runs afoul of everything the Duchess has ever known about the Grondovich family, the Grondovich family, and his son Grondovich, in which she believed the old Duke Grondovich to be an effective leader, but his son to be an incompoop. So she's surprised to hear this. She didn't know that boy had anything close to that level of ruthlessness. But apparently she had read him wrong. So, okay, now she's worried. Why? Well, because West Ilmington and East Ilmington have been at war for a long, long time. So, what they do is basically keep each other busy, and so they don't bother the other countries around them. Well, since Grondovich taken over, he had sought and received not one but two separate war-fighting postponement arrangements with the dukes over, and the duke and his kids and stuff over in East Ilmington. So the Duchess is aware of this. Her spies are bringing this information to her. She knows anyway what's going on with this sort of treaty level stuff, and she's not happy. Why? Because obviously Grondovich has designs on doing what his father never could. While she respected Grondo as an effective leader, especially on the battlefield and such, he really didn't have a good sense of when to attack and when to hang back and when to defend. And every time he had a little advantage, he'd brush headlong and get half his people killed, and then wouldn't have an advantage. He'd have to seek another war-fighting postponement, or the other side would. And it's been going on like this for generations, with a succession of battles that were intended to be decisive, that were not decisive, and then ended up just resulting in the dukes talking to each other and saying, "Can we postpone this for 6 months? Because I got to build more peasants." You know. So now the Grondovich isn't attacking them. Well, he must have his eyes on something else. And there's only one place that he could possibly be aiming at. Only one place with money, and that's New Hampshire. The Duchess has the most money of anybody in the region, except perhaps some of the richer Acutronian neighborhoods over to the southeast. But those are largely anarcho-capitalistic, semi-autonomous, self-governing states. And nobody wants to fuck with the Acutronians, especially prior to the beginning of Uneven Time. Now that Uneven Time has started to work on upon the world, it's taken about 50 years to really settle in. The faster places are starting to speed up a little bit, but it doesn't seem to actually be quite taking yet. And no sure, the Duchess isn't sure why, but they don't seem to be going as fast really as they might. They don't seem to be going much faster than her. They're not really developing stuff exactly. What's going on? So, she's worried about Grondovich. And she is curious about the metaphysics of the whole thing. Like, why is time not working the way we thought it was going to work? So, what she does, she decides to be smart, just to be safe. The one spot that she wants more than any other spot is the spot on the other side of the pass, on the other side of the hill, which is in Elmington. So, she basically wants to conquer a little piece of their country, but just have to put a fort and an establishment right there at that pass, and make sure that pass is well defended, and make sure that if they are coming to New Hampshire, that they are going to have to go through some fighting, you know, whatever it is they got going on. Okay, so she calls on her right-hand man, Mr. Corporal Wisdom. He's a corporal, and he is, last name's Wisdom. He's a Tension. Now, Tension is a god I didn't mention before, but not really a god. She's a demigod of Alienator, and she is the god of rigidity and protocol. And she is, naturally, the Tensions don't call her that. They call her the goddess of establishing order or something like that. I don't know, some bullshit like that. Basically, what she does is she makes a bunch of rules and busts people and empowers certain other people to enforce those rules. So, Wisdom was a very loyal Tension. Had been from the get-go. Very rule oriented. And very much having internalized all the narratives of chivalry and such, so that being tasked with a job by a nobility like the Duchess was something that moved him to his soul. Corporal Wisdom naturally was quite excited to be called before the Duchess, but he was a little bit concerned when she informed him of her plan to take the pass. He was concerned as a military man. He was concerned that it wasn't very defensible until they built the fort, and he had a lot of other concerns, but basically she said, you're going to do it anyway, and here's some men, here's some money, and here's some Acutronians. Of course they needed Acutronians, because in this world, at the time, before Uneven Time, in our world, before Uneven Time took root and it spread us out like the way it has now, before then, the way it worked was you couldn't just, like, design your own building. We weren't cognitively able to do that yet. Instead, Accutron had his truths channeled by people who were drawing designs and stuff, and he only gave out a certain number of them, and only Acutronians could channel the designs. Then once the Acutronians had the designs, they were very protectionist about the information. They wouldn't sell you the design. They'd say, well, you can lease it for the duration of the build. If possible, if you hired Acutronians, which is what they wanted, not only for the designing part, but for the building part, you didn't have to, but you did, you never even see the plans at all. So there were only a certain number of plans, and there was a library that most of the royalty, though, had, because they had at some point been the ones who had purchased this or that and had insisted one way or the other, managed to get copies of the plans for these things. So we're now in Ilmington. We're hanging out with Duke Grondovich and his right-hand man, uh, what's that guy's name? Uh, it's like Mahler or something like that. Anyway, his right-hand man, and Mahler and Grondovich, as we meet them, they have shut down all the borders for Wilmington. Nobody's in and out. Nobody comes in and out. And this is one of the things that's worried the Duchess too. It's like, what is this got going on back there behind this big hidden thing he's got going on back there? Well, it turns out the Duchess was right to be suspicious. He does have something big going on back there. He's got a secret weapon in the making. And what he's done is he has figured out, just by thinking about plants and animals and stuff, he's figured it out that genetics stem from a combination of the mother and the father, and he's got a plan, he's got an idea. He thinks he can make super soldiers, genetically engineered super soldiers. So what he does is, once his dad died and he was able to put his plans into motion, he called all the peasants of the town together. Now, what the peasants didn't know, and what Yallers is his name. What Yallers didn't know, what only Yallers knew, and what even Grondovich himself was a little unclear about, is that in fact Grondovich had not killed his father on purpose, but rather had been playing with a sword, even though he was 22 years old or whatever, pretending, and accidentally stabbed his father through the chest. The regent, Yallers, who's his right-hand man, of course, spun the story to make it into regicide, because that was more fitting for someone of Grondovich's social status. Now, Grondovich and Yallers, they visit the town square, they call together all the peasants, and they say, listen, Grondovich says, listen, peasants, come here. And some of them come over, and Grondovich assumes that they'll tell the rest of them what he says, so he informs them, listen, you guys, the breeding pairs that I set up, I put on the walls of the pub, right, I need those children, the ones that came out from those breeding pairs, I need them coming right now, all of them, I want to see them. And of course, Yallers says, dude, you know, we've talked about this before, but you know how you indicated that 10 years was the right amount of time to grow super soldiers? And the Duke's like, yeah. And I explained what, Yallers? That 10 years was enough time. Yes, so what's the problem? Where are my super soldiers? And he said, and you know, Yallers is like, well, Duke, even though it's very generous of you to give them 10 years, I'm not sure that the super soldier children grow any faster than regular children. And the Duke doesn't want to hear that necessarily, and just simply insists that the soldiers be brought forward. Now, Yallers knows also that, first of all, the Duke was constantly changing the breeding pairs, so he would, in fact, go into the town periodically and say, look at the people and say, you, what's your name, and write it down, and find a man, you, what's your name, write it down, and put them down as breeding pairs, and put it up all over the place. But number one, almost none of his population could read, and so they didn't know what those things were. And number two, when somebody finally did make them aware of what they said, the peasants were just sort of confused as to why they would be bred with one another, even though they already had like wives and husbands and stuff, you know. So they just basically kind of were confused and ignored it, and that's more or less what happened. And then, of course, periodically the Duke would come back into the town and he'd say, peasants, gather around me. And they'd gather around dutifully, and he'd post more things on, and then he'd start explaining them. Now, listen, we're trying to establish some genetic coding here that's going to make you guys, instead of these regular, pretty much useless peasants that you currently are, what we want is for you guys to breed in such a way that we produce a soldier that's going to be a highly effective killing machine. I'm looking for a guy who's like, I don't know, 8 feet tall. I want big arms, big muscles. I want a sword. Instead of a hand, I want a sword growing out of his arm right here. And Ideally, he'd have at the bottom, beneath the knee, coming down from the knee area, he'd have a horse on each leg. So instead of being riding a horse, he'd be running. His legs would be horses, and then he'd be able to run as fast as a horse, but still stab people with his arm without having to unsheath the weapon. It's right there as part of his hand. That's what I want. And so Yallers brought out these super soldiers, but of course, they were just the random children he could round up that looked to be about 10 years old. He had to present the Duke something. So he goes back and says, Duke, here they are, your super soldiers. And the Duke says, but Yallers, they look just like regular serf children. These are indistinguishable from normal peasant children. And Yallers said, well, but it's because they need more time, maybe. And the Duke says, no, Yallers, no. Listen, it's as simple as this. These peasants, they didn't do it right. And they made the wrong kids. Sorry. And of course, Yallers had to just concede defeat about that. He was right. The Duke was right. They obviously had done it wrong because the Duke's result had not been achieved. So while the Duke was sorely disappointed, he was not one to wallow in self-pity or suffering, and he immediately turned his attention to what else would be fun, because somebody had fucked up this experiment of his. Went back to his office, we had a little sign on the desk that said success means working together to implement my will. And on that sign, he'd stare at that when he was feeling down, and he'd just think, man, it's like they don't get the motto. It's like nobody in that town even trying. They're not even trying. Really, they're obviously not. My will was not that. A bunch of squirming peasant children? No. I didn't see anything unusual about it. Not one sword. Not even the beginning. It didn't even look like a horse was starting to grow out of the bottom of his foot. He's starting to feel pretty down at this point. But Grondovich then goes, you know what? I just need to get... I know. I'll build a new palace. This palace is boring. I'm tired of this palace. And so he sits down and takes out a piece of paper and he starts drawing on it. Some circles here, some squiggly lines there, and some squares and boxes and stuff. And then he says, Yallers! Yallers, get in here! Yallers comes in and he says, now listen, I have a better plan. Forget the peasants. Just cancel that whole shit. Tell them, no more breeding pairs. Just breed whoever you want with, I guess, or something. Or actually tell them, don't breed it all until I might want to come back and fix this, and I don't want them breeding with the wrong ones. Just tell them, don't breed until further notice. Regardless, don't worry about that right now. Send somebody else because we got other important things to do. I want to build this palace right now. I want to build it somewhere. I need to find a place that's cool to build it. Your job is to find me that place. I want a place with waterfalls. I want a place with like mountains and like fish and stuff like that. So here, and he hands Yallers the blueprint, and Yallers is like, "What is this? I don't know. I have no idea what this is." And the Duke says, "Well, it's a drawing of my palace. See, this circle is like a fountain, and these squiggly lines are a waterfall. I want a waterfall inside the palace, okay? And we're going to build it like this, long around, and it's going to curve like this and go, meow. And then Yallers is like, wait, hold on. For the first time in his life, in fact, for the first time in anyone's life, the world realized, Accutron was either dead or disabled because human beings now could make their own designs for space objects. Well, when we return next time, we will discuss the next part, which is about about Elias Cork arriving at the Church of Squalor.